Good morning, I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for streaming with us. In today's update, breaking news. Parts of the Capitol are being evacuated amid reports of an external security threat. Listen.
Due to an external security threat, no entry or exit is permitted at this time in any buildings of the Capitol complex. You may move throughout the buildings, but stay away from exterior windows and doors.
Now, police now say there was a fire at a nearby encampment, but that it was extinguished with no injuries. D.C. is on high alert, expecting 25,000 National Guard troops to ensure a safe inauguration on Wednesday. And at least 21 states have also activated National Guard troops to protect their capitals from possible unrest. The increased security comes as new images of the storming of the Capitol show a mob searching for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
We're outnumbered. There's a million of us out there, and we are listening to Trump. You're the boss.
Meanwhile, President Trump is facing a Senate impeachment trial as soon as this week. The president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, tells ABC News he will no longer be representing him at his impeachment trial because he was a witness to the Trump rally before the attack on the Capitol. There are also new reports that President Trump could issue 100 pardons on his way out of office. That could include a self-pardon, even though his personal lawyers advise him against it. Some are even threatening to quit if he goes through with it. And President Trump will not attend Biden's inauguration this Wednesday, making him the first president to miss his successor's swearing in more than 150 years. And the incoming Biden administration is vowing to distribute 100 million vaccine doses in Biden's first 100 days in office. The CDC reports right now out of 31 million COVID vaccine doses distributed in the country, only a little over 12 million have been administered. This is the death toll in the U.S. is now more than 397,000. California alone is approaching 3 million total cases. And now to a parenting alert about screen time. A recent New York Times article found children's screen time has soared in the pandemic, prompting at least one specialist to warn of an epic withdrawal. Becky Worley has more on what parents can do.
Like many kids, 14-year-old James Reichert of Boulder, Colorado, used to having an active schedule of basketball, piano, and biking, is now all in on his devices.
I started playing my Xbox way more and turned to my phone to communicate with my friends.
But things hit a breaking point when his dad realized how much time was being spent just playing one device.
What concerned me the most was when I saw 1 week, it was literally 40 hours. And it hit me that this is like a full-time job.
Didn't feel like 40 hours playing with my friends the whole time we're talking.
So limits were placed. That spike in use, not unique. The screen time monitoring application Custodio releasing data showing kids' device usage has doubled since a year ago. One example, YouTube now averaging 97 minutes a day per user, double the viewing time from 2019. And online game Roblox, a huge hit with the 9 to 12-year-old set, now reporting over 31 million players, explosive growth up 82% since last year. The Reicherts rethinking what they can do in this difficult time. All steps toward the time when normal life resumes.
Early in the pandemic, I repeatedly urged parents not to be unduly concerned about their children's overuse of screens. But we've now reached a point where it's almost a year. We start now to try to reintroduce some level of guardrails around children's media use.
One idea, parental controls for iPhones and Android phones have gotten much better and easier to use. So here are 3 things you can set up. A bedtime, when your child's devices stop connecting to the internet. Then there are age-appropriate content filters to at least minimize sexually explicit material and violence, and screen time reporting. So at least you have an idea of how much device time they are racking up each week, Diane.
All right, good advice, Becky. Thank you. And let's bring in psychologist Dr. Sanam Hafiz for more on what parents can do to be sure their kids aren't getting too much screen time. Dr. Hafiz, thanks for being here. You know, what happens to children's brains when they look at screens, or particularly when they look at screens too much?
So, you know, this is true for all of us, but children's brains are still developing. They're still somewhat plastic. And so what happens is when you're engaged in too much screen time, your brain somewhat goes into autopilot, where it stops problem solving for itself. It stops critical thinking because the screen is doing it for you. And also understand that every time let's say a child's on Instagram or they're on Snapchat and they get a ping or they get, notification, it basically activates the reward centers in the brain. And this is somewhat, if you want to make a comparison, something like gambling, where there is a constant activation of the pleasure and reward centers in the brain that keeps you going. And now, because of the pandemic, this has also become, screen time is almost inextractable from socialization, because this is how kids are connecting. And there's no buffer as in, just playing on the playground or going to go get, ice cream with your friends. So this is all they have. And so that social aspect of it is really sort of drawing kids in. But what it's doing, it's sort of making children unable to connect maybe on a more, human, normal social level. But it's also taking away from their ability to think for themselves, abstract thinking, concrete thinking, making eye contact. And we have tons and tons of data that shows a correlation, not necessarily a cause and effect, but a correlation in excessive screen time and damage to the brain. There's a part of the brain that begins to atrophy and with excessive gaming. So screen time is not that far off.
And what about virtual learning? A lot of parents worked really hard to minimize screen time before the pandemic, but now their kids have to be on a screen all day for school.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem, right? Like, we're on a screen for work. Our kids are on the screen for learning. And then when we get off these screens, there's an engagement, there is a draw to come back to those screens for socialization, for entertainment, and it seems like there just doesn't seem to be a break. And so even with virtual learning, if your child has any break, especially with the younger children, I'm a mom of 2 and 5-year-old boys, so I can tell you the minute they're off of class, even though I would love to do some homework with them, I say, nope, go back. I have a backyard, I'm very fortunate. I go in the backyard, just get some sun, run around, expend some of that energy. And so if you have the time and you can go for a brisk walk with your children, around the block, or even just let them do some jumping jacks or do some, pleasure reading, it's a break from the screen. You just need to break up that screen time. It's the chronicity, it's the nonstop screen time that is really bad for the brain.
And how do you know when screen time is becoming a real problem? Are there red flags we can look out for?
Absolutely. I mean, when your child doesn't want to go to sleep or would rather be on a screen than go outside and play with a friend, or, if you're able to do, I've had parents who've complained, I've tried to set up socially distant play dates and my child would rather stay home and play Roblox or a video game. And that's a concern if they're trying to, not eat or rush through their meals, if they can't sit down and watch a movie with you on family night because they'd rather be in their room gaming, those are really valid concerns. And of course, it affects the way children eat. It affects the way they sleep. It's, children's brains on the screen, on video games are a real pandemic.
And limiting screen time, of course, is easier said than done, especially right now. So any tips for how parents can go about doing this?
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm a big fan of are not just setting limits, but making that screen time contingent upon something. So if you say, all right, complete your homework, complete this task, complete this chore, complete your meal, and you can get 15 to 20 minutes of playtime on your screen, whatever it is that they like to do. So if you're already giving them, let's say, an hour, or even 2 hours, which I think is a bit excessive, but even if you're giving them that much, you can say, all right, well, I'm going to dole this out in small increments. And you're making this dependent on them completing other tasks, which I think you have a much better chance of, A, getting them to complete whatever they have to complete, B, they learn how to earn these rewards instead of just having them, and C, you're breaking them up into smaller segments so they're not on the screen for a one, really long stretch of time.
And even adults, we're on our devices more during the pandemic than we would be normally. Many people are working remotely. We're also socializing a lot more virtually. So how can we set an example for our kids without cutting ourselves off from the world?
Children watch us and they take most of their cues from us. So it's hard to say to a child, well, you can't be on the screen when they're watching you on your screen. So one of the things that you can do is really try to discipline and set some examples. So for instance, no screens, no phones at dinner time or meal time. I think that's a big one. Or just saying, okay, about, for half an hour a day in the evening, let's say after you're done with school, after you're done with work, we're just going to have a screen-free time where you can literally put all your phones in a drawer and set them to do not disturb and just do something fun. Even if that means just, eating a snack together, even if it means playing a board game together, even if it means just sitting down and talking about your day. And also explain to your children that even though I know we are guilty of also, going on social media and getting, sort of roped into the news cycle, which is really detrimental, and that's a whole other segment. But we can also explain to them, we use our phones to work, and we work so we can, pay for your screens and your Wi-Fi. So I think also explaining that to your children is a big part of, it's just sort of getting them to understand how important it is for them to, limit those screens and just explain that concept. It's not as easy, for children to grasp as it is for some of us adults.
All right, Dr. Sanam Hafiz, thank you. And now for some of the top headlines in technology, here's ABC's Alex Perche.
In today's Tech Bites, Facebook is blocking certain events through Inauguration Day. People won't be allowed to create any event taking place near the White House, the U.S. Capitol building, or state houses across the country. The goal is to keep the platform from being used to organize violent attacks. And dating apps are swiping left on suspected Capitol Hill rioters. According to the Washington Post, Bumble, Tinder, and other dating apps are using images from the attack to identify and block people known to have participated. And there's a wristband that lets your employer track your mood. The goal is to monitor how workers are coping while they're working from home. The Moonbeam has two buttons. One you press if you're happy, another for when you're sad. The information goes to your manager in real time. And those are your Tech Bites. Diane, back to you.
All right, Alex Perche, thank you. And in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, 4th and 5th graders from Houston, Dallas, and Chicago celebrated in an annual MLK Jr. oratory competition. This year's theme, how do you think Dr. King's teachings can help us today? Here's TJ Holmes with more.
Nearly 60 years ago, with the U.S. Capitol building looming in the distance, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. addressed a then broken America. His words still echo today.
We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force.
Those words inspiring the history makers of tomorrow.
If I could dream like Dr. King, I would dream that no one would be afraid when they look at me. You shouldn't judge people by how they look on the outside. You should get to know people first, then judge them by how they treat you and others.
If he found out what was happening today, he would say, "My work is not done."
Adults, you do know we see you, right? We see the name calling, the fighting, the social media bullying, grown-ups climbing over walls to steal votes just because your friend lost.
Protests have become more dangerous over the years. This type of behavior is unacceptable.
You guys tell us to play nice, hug it out, and breathe. America, you need to stop all this fighting and take a deep breath.
Dr. King said it best. If we do not learn to live together as friends, we die as fools. If our parents cannot solve this, it's up to my generation.
Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. When the world does not have an example of love, we must be that example. Let there be peace and equality on earth, and let it begin with us.
Makes you feel a little bit better about the future. TJ Holmes, thank you for that. And that does it for this ABC News Live update. I'm Diane Macedo. Thank you for joining us. And remember, ABC News Live is here for you all day with the latest news, context, and analysis. I'll see you back here at 3 p.m. Eastern with Terry Moran for The Breakdown.
Overseas today, there was a great celebration in the French city of Toulouse. The political leaders of France and Germany, Great Britain, and Spain were there, and this is what they were there to celebrate. An airplane, the Airbus A380, in which they are all partners. The largest passenger plane in the world, unveiled today in all of its enormous glory.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.